Welcome, friends, back to Shaboom, the podcast for and all about you baby boomers, or those of you out there who want to know a little bit more about that generation of people. Today, we're going to talk about our word of the week, and that word is authority. Or in other words, what makes you someone people should listen to. Each week, I try to bring you both insights and information relevant to your life, and I try to bring you interesting people who are authorities in their own respective fields. Let's talk about authority. There's lots of definitions of authority. One is a person with influence, power, or command, someone who can convince you to do something, a person who sees more and knows more and does both earlier, an expert in a subject matter. Now, do I consider myself an authority? Well, actually, I do. Firstly, I think I'm an expert in corporate sponsorship, both sales and servicing. I've been fortunate enough in my career to buy or sell over $1 billion worth of corporate sponsorships in almost every major sporting event in the world, a number of musical events, a number of calls marketing activities. So, yeah, I consider myself an expert, an authority in corporate sponsorships. Secondly, I really consider myself an authority in college sports marketing. I spent 20 years in that arena. Thirdly, I consider myself an authority on unique American restaurants and foods. I've taken lots of road trips. I've read a lot. I've eaten a lot. It's led me to this assumption. I have a newsletter that some of you subscribe to called On the Road with Rick, where I talk about great places to eat. Fourthly, I consider myself an authority on baby boomers. This podcast is kind of proof of that pudding. And finally, I consider myself authority on building and running a small business. I have built 4 different agency businesses in the past. So yes, authority is both important and it's real to me. This is a very special week for me as I have a brand new book being released today on Amazon and at your favorite bookstore. It is called The Business Tithe. Let me read the back cover to you. Yeah, the tagline of The Business Tithe is a faith-based framework for profitable businesses that change the world. In The Business Tithe, seasoned entrepreneur Rick K. Jones shares a transformative framework for business owners who want to grow profits while making a meaningful difference. Drawing on decades of experience leading successful marketing agencies, Jones reveals a 7-step model that blends timeless business principles with faith-based and faith-inspired stewardship. Wow, there's a lot there, isn't it? Faith-based, I believe God created the world in 7 days, and so we've got 7 steps to build a successful business. And success in every sense of that word. We talk about profits. You got to have a profitable business. Only profitable businesses can help people. And then you use your resources, your talents, your time, and your money to actually change the world in some small way. Why did I write this book? Well, I really had a feeling that our country might be heading in the wrong direction, that we're looking for answers other than within ourselves, that we're looking for somebody else to solve our problems instead of us solving all of our own problems. I don't believe that today. I believe we need to do some stuff. I wrote this a few years ago. I said, we're at a crossroads in America. This is what I wrote in October of 2018, long before the coronavirus pandemic, various natural disasters, and 2 very contentious national presidential elections. We're now seeing that we as a country have failed many of our constituencies and fellow citizens, and we seem to be mired in a sea of disillusionment. I'm hoping this book is the antidote to disillusionment. Many of our problems feel unsolvable, and our government doesn't offer appropriate answers on either side of the aisle. Our political differences have made us less likely to engage with people with opposite views. Some of the brutal truths in American society today include the reality that businesses and the very foundation of capitalism are under attack. More and more business owners and entrepreneurs are being portrayed as selfish, greedy, and insensitive to the broader needs of society. The perception is growing that billionaires are becoming increasingly wealthy while others are falling further and further behind. At the same time, a generation of young people is increasingly looking to institutions, especially the government, for solutions to their personal struggles and broader social problems. Many Americans feel that the dream of upward mobility, of improving life for themselves and their families, is slipping out of reach. According to the Pew Research, 47% of Americans believe the American dream is no longer possible. They're convinced that the odds are stacked against them by forces outside of their control. Now, we know that nature abhors a vacuum, and it is our responsibility to step in and fill that void. I believe the time has come for small businesses, small business owners to unite and show society the true benefits of capitalism. Together, we can push back against the drift towards socialism by leveraging our collective political, financial, and spiritual influence for the good of all. That's what this book's about, and I hope you'll go out and get it. I think it's good for anybody, but it's really good if you're a small business owners, to help you be the best that you can be. My guest today is actually the CEO of the publishing company I work with, the CEO of Advantage Media Group. He's my publisher, and he's one of the most innovative business people out there today. Adam has written many books, including a couple of great books that I have here today. One called Lead the Field, Become an Authority and Dominate Your Competition. Another book called Book Itch. Is there a book in you? Obviously, there was a couple of books in me. Let's welcome Adam to Shaboom. Hey, Adam, thanks for being with us today on Shaboom.
Rick, my pleasure. I'm excited.
Well, I ask every guest the same first two questions. Where were you raised and who influenced you as a child?
Well, and for the record, for all the listeners, there's no prep. These are all rapid fire, so I hope my answers are good. I was born and raised in Annapolis, Maryland, one of my favorite cities in the world, on the coast, lots of history, incredible architecture. Of course, its place in American history is significant. And grew up till I was about 10 years old in Annapolis. Of course, I live in Charleston now, and I think probably subconsciously one of the reasons I love Charleston so much is it reminds me of Annapolis. Who influenced me? A lot of great influencers and mentors. Of course, it starts with my parents. I have been so blessed to have two parents that have been married next month 50 years. I was fortunate that my mom was largely a stay-at-home mom when my brother and I were growing up. My dad was an entrepreneur, and that's really, I think, where I learned about business and kind of got my taste for trying to do something out on my own. But there were a number of, kind of teachers and mentors. I've always been a big reader. Of course, this is now what I do for a living as a publisher. But a couple of great mentors stand out to me. One is a guy by the name of Pat Williams, the late Pat Williams. He was the founder of the Orlando Magic basketball team. He was a mentor to me for 26 years.
How'd you meet Pat, Adam?
I read a book that he had written when I was in high school, and I wrote him a letter telling him I had read his book and how much I liked it. And that was it. There was no call to action. There was no request. He then writes me a letter back and sends me a signed basketball by the team, the Orlando Magic. And so I was blown away. I was a big Orlando Magic basketball fan. So I write him a letter back to thank him. And then in that letter, I asked him if I could take him out to lunch. I was 15 years old. I couldn't even drive myself to lunch. So I had my mom take me. But I had lunch with him when I was 15 years old, and it all started by reading his book. Pat Williams was a great mentor. Another guy named Alan Mullally, who was a business leader. He ran Ford Motor Company. He ran Boeing commercial airplanes. Similar, I read a book that was written about him, and through a kind of wild circumstance, got connected to him, told him how much I loved the book, told him how I had implemented much of what I learned through him in the book in my business. And that just kind of, turned into a relationship. So hands down, my parents, the single greatest influences, but a couple of key business mentors that really started when I was very, very young.
Did you always know you wanted to be an entrepreneur because your dad had been? I mean, was that the thought of owning your own business was always at top of mind?
It wasn't initially. When I was a kid growing up, my dream was to be the general manager of an NBA basketball team. I loved basketball. I loved, the business of basketball as well. The player selection, the roster composition. Like, just as a little kid, it was really neat to me. And we were so lucky. I was born in Annapolis, but really my formative years, call it, age, 9 through college, were in Orlando, Florida. And it just so happened it was in the 90s when the Orlando Magic had Shaq and Penny and were the hottest team in the NBA. And so we went to games as a kid, lots of games as a kid. And I just thought, man, wouldn't it be neat to run an NBA basketball team? I learned, of course, that, man, the only thing better than running a basketball team would be owning the basketball team. And I said, well, if I'm going to own a basketball team, I'm going to have to figure out a way to make a lot of money. And it's probably going to be as an entrepreneur. For the record, I'm still a very long way from ever being able to own an NBA basketball team. But that's kind of the origin of how it started.
What made you go to Clemson?
It's funny you say that. Pat Williams, that mentor that I mentioned, Pat Williams was the youngest general manager of a professional sports team in sports history at the time. At age 29, he was the general manager of the Chicago Bulls. And before Chicago, he was the general manager of the Spartanburg Phillies. That was his first job, was running a minor league baseball team. And Spartanburg is about a 45-minute drive to Clemson. And Pat Williams, in 1971, was the voice of the Clemson Tigers for one season. He was the color commentator. In fact, he was hired for that job by the legendary coach Frank Howard. So Pat Williams has this Clemson connection. He, of course, goes on to found the Orlando Magic. I'm living in Orlando. And in 1994, Pat Williams makes a trade to bring number 54 Horace Grant to the Orlando Magic, from the Chicago Bulls to the Magic. So I'm a kid, I'm growing up in Central Florida, and as I get closer and closer to making a decision of where am I going to go to college, all of my friends are either going to Florida State, University of Florida, or the University of Miami. And I guess it's the entrepreneur in me. I just wanted to do something different, right? I didn't want to do the same thing that everybody else that I knew was doing. And so we would go to the games and they would do the starting lineup and the PA announcer would say, number 54 from Clemson, Horace Grant. That literally, Rick, is how I even knew the name Clemson. So I decide to apply sight unseen. I get in and I say, I want to go somewhere different. I want to spread my wings. I want to fly. I go to Clemson in the fall of 1999. We're driving into the campus. It's in the middle of nowhere at the time. There's cow pastures on each side of the road as you're driving into the university. And I remember I looked at my parents and I said, I can always transfer. I would never once think those words ever again. it was an incredible 4-year experience. And had it not been for Pat Williams, I would not have landed at Clemson. Had I not landed in Clemson, I would not have ended up in Charleston. Had I not ended up in Charleston, you and I would not be doing this podcast right now.
You know, it's interesting about forks in the road. A lot of people that don't know about Pat Williams, I mean, number one, he wrote an enormous amount of books, and a lot of them he published with you later on. But he also either fostered or adopted significant number of children. I mean, this guy had an impact on his immediate family, and then he had such an impact on others that he was just one of the great human beings.
He was what I call a life giver. I mean, he just gave and gave and gave, and he had a level of positivity that was unrivaled. I mean, it would just rub off on everybody around him. He adopted 15 children from third world countries. He and his wife had 4 biological children, and then they adopted 15 more. So he had 19 kids. Today, he has 32 grandchildren. And up until he passed in the summer of 2024, his mission, and he would always say to me, Adam, I got to keep working. I told all my kids I would pay for every grandchild to go to college. And he was so big on education. Education, he felt, was the ticket for anybody to elevate the quality of their life. And so he was big on college. He was big on master's degrees and advanced degrees. And he kept peddling books because he had to pay for more college tuition.
Well, when you first started Advantage, I know you were kind of figuring out what direction you were going to go. You know, there were so many ways, but you ultimately have settled on, which is our word for the day, which is authority. You established this, what I call niche. I've always said there are riches and niches, and your niche is this unique niche of helping a book author use the book to become an authority or to articulate the authority that they already have. How did you get there? How'd you kind of land on that sweet spot?
Yeah, so it's interesting, Rick. I want to double down on what you said. The riches are in the niches. And that's one thing that I was so lucky to learn early in my career, that like, hey, if you can focus and do one thing better than anybody else, it's a much easier path to building something of significance than just being broad and all over the place. And when I decided to get into the publishing business, Pat Williams, that mentor, he said to me, Adam, you need to start a company that helps entrepreneurs and CEOs write books. Because when they write the book on the topic, everybody sees them as the authority on that topic. So Pat Williams was really, again, that inspiration. And, you know, I really liked business just personally. I love business. You know, if you said to me, Adam, who are the celebrities that you kind of look to? I think of the great entrepreneurs and the great business leaders, not necessarily the musicians and the pop artists. And so I just had a personal interest in business and business books. I read a ton of business books. And I thought, man, if I've got to pick a lane, I'm going to work with the entrepreneur, the CEO, the business leader. And as I'm starting down that path, what I realized, Rick, after speaking to so many of our authors, what they wanted from me was not a book. The book was the vessel. The outcome that they really wanted was to be the thought leader in their category. And by being the author of the book, it gave them a platform to be seen by their peers and the world at large as the thought leader, as the authority on that topic. And with authority, it opens doors, right? And, you know, they were getting invited to speak. They were asked, could they do consulting? People were finding them and saying, hey, I'd like to do business with you, or I'd like to do business with your business. And so doors just started opening. And, the more authority you have, the more doors you open. And so that's really where it kind of coalesced around, hey, the business we're in is authority. The vessel that we create is this incredible book that is the platform for the authority of the individual.
I know you also had a great relationship with the late Dan Kennedy, who was probably the authority on direct mail and direct response marketing. Talk a little bit about him and what he meant to your career too.
Yeah, so in 2005, I'm 23 years old. It's the first year that I start my business. And to quote my mother, I don't know shit from Shinola. And I'm just trying to figure it out, right? And so
I'll tell you a funny thing. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life, and somebody said to my wife one time, "Rick is an overnight success," and she said, "Yes," and it was a long damn night. But she also said this. She said, "Had we known how hard it was going to be,
Right.
we'd have never done it. But we were young and stupid, and so you figure it out, right?"
That's right. And I can agree. If I knew the ups and downs that I would go through, then maybe I never would have done it to begin with. So it's good that I didn't. So it's 2005, and I'm like, I started this business. I've got to get some customers. And a friend of mine who I went to school with at Clemson, he lived in Charleston, and he said, "Oh, you should subscribe to the Dan Kennedy marketing letter. It's $20 a month. And every month you get this newsletter, and it's literally like a seminar in print, and it'll give you marketing ideas. And in some cases, it'll give you marketing campaigns." So I sign up for this newsletter, and every month, literally, this newsletter comes, and I would turn everything off. I would close the door to my office, which was my bedroom at the time. That was my office. And I would literally divulge and devour this entire marketing newsletter that Dan Kennedy had written. And that would give me enough marketing and promotional ideas, at least for the next 30 days, to kind of keep my business going. And Dan Kennedy was an incredible giant in marketing and direct response marketing. And he really focused on helping entrepreneurs that didn't have big budgets, right? You didn't have the money to run advertising like Coca-Cola does. So you got to be scrappy. You got to be entrepreneurial. And man, oh man, if I didn't have him to learn from my first handful of years, I don't think I'd be here today.
It's interesting about that. I have a similar path. I, learned the sponsorship business. I'd been a coach, and I learned from an organization called the International Events Group out of Chicago, a family business. Lisa Uchtman, Lauren Uchtman, and John Uchtman put on the first major conference on sponsorship, but they had a monthly newsletter too, the IEG newsletter, about sponsorship. And it was about what others were doing, case studies and all this, but it was a how-to manual. And I've told Lisa Uchtman, everything I learned about the sponsorship industry, I learned at her conferences. And so it's interesting about how you do that. And candidly, if you look at the body of the authors that you have today, so which I call the authority army.
Yeah.
A great place to start for young entrepreneurs is go read their books. Go find, people can be mentors to you that you never meet. Now, were
100%.
fortunate to meet Dan, and y'all did a lot of things together, but there have been
right.
other people that you've been able to mentor. The one I'm really intrigued about is you now publish Forbes business books. How did you get to know Steve Forbes?
Yeah, another crazy story. So I had started Advantage Media in 2005, and our book line is called Advantage Books. And I'm 6 or 7 years into that business. We're having some traction. We're having some success. We're producing some really great books. And I am at a conference, a media conference, and literally by chance, I sit down next to the vice president of marketing for Forbes. And we have a really nice conversation over lunch. And just as we're about to push our seats from the table and go our separate ways, I say to her, I have a question. Forbes is almost 100 years old. It's the biggest business magazine in the world. I'm just curious, why don't you publish business books? And she took a breath and she kind of sat back in her chair and she said, Adam, it's hard enough to make money selling magazines. We don't want to try to learn how to make money selling books. And she gave me an opening. And that opening was, well, what if I told you there was a different way? So I shared with her our approach to publishing, which many today call it hybrid publishing, where the entrepreneurial author is making an investment in their book on the front end in exchange for owning the rights, keeping their intellectual property, and owning the back end, which is really important to entrepreneurial people. And I said, what if we could make money on every author that we signed? And then I said, if you took the Advantage platform and business model and we put the Forbes name and brand on top, 1 + 1 could equal 5. So she says, this is interesting. Let me share it with Steve. Because, of course, Steve Forbes is a multi-book author. And she calls me a few weeks later and she says, hey, we're interested in learning more. And so I said, well, let me fly up to New York and let me make a presentation. And that is where it started. It took almost a year to get that into a strategic partnership that ultimately birthed Forbes Books. But the moral of the story to me is, number one, you never know who you're going to sit next to at lunch. Number two, when you see an opening, you've got to take it. And number three, big deals usually do not get done overnight. They take lots of perseverance. They take lots of follow-up. They take lots of diligence to get them across the finish line.
Well, one of your new ventures is with South by Southwest. Talk a little bit about that. That's fascinating too.
Yeah. So going back, Rick, the riches are in the niches, right? So the Forbes brand means something to a lot of people. The South by Southwest brand means something to a lot of
To a
people.
whole separate group of people.
Totally different, right? The person that wants to publish under Forbes, yeah, they may know of South by Southwest. They may respect it, but that brand doesn't speak to them. Similarly, the person that South by speaks to, Forbes, yeah, I know it, I respect it, but that's not me, right? So South by Southwest is really this incredible community of creators, of innovators, of kind of tech forward disruptors, what we call idea makers, change makers, right? Kind of bringing, philanthropy and business together in lots of different ways. And so we have not as many, but a number of authors that have books, a topic, and or a background that really resonates with the South by audience. So South by Southwest Books is a brand that speaks to those kinds of people with that kind of message. And, the reason you might publish under South by Southwest Books is that now your message is going to be amplified to the South by Southwest audience. Similarly, if you're publishing under Forbes, the topic is probably more business oriented, maybe financial related, titans of industry, titans of kind of business focused. That message is going to be amplified to Forbes. So we today now have entrepreneur, which is very much startup and scale up. We have South by Southwest, which is very innovators, creatives, idea makers. And then we have Forbes, which is kind of, business success, ambition, kind of, titans of industry, for lack of a better word.
But I like the fact that you didn't try to do them all at once. I mean, you all, again, riches and niches, learn, master. When you've mastered, go to something else, go to something else. And from that standpoint, you're also a pilot. What made you want to fly? How did that come about?
Yeah, Rick, I was driving to Atlanta for a business meeting. You've made that drive before. It's painful. From Charleston to Atlanta, 4.5, 5 hours.
It's a bridge. I call it a bridge too far.
And it is a long 4.5 and 5 hours, right? Make no mistake. So I'm driving back from my meeting, and I'm crossing the Augusta. I'm crossing through Augusta. So I'm kind of in that halfway mark, give or take. I'm crossing the Savannah River, and my friend calls me. He's a pilot, and he's like, "Hey, what's up?" And I said, "Oh man, I'm just driving home from a business meeting. I should be home by 7 or 8 o'clock tonight." And he says, "Adam, I've told you once, and I've told you twice, you need to become a pilot, because when you have an airplane, that's a hour trip versus a 5-hour trip." And he said, when you're a pilot and when you're an entrepreneur, an airplane is a time machine, and it is an ATM machine, because you can go visit prospects and customers and enrich relationships that will grow your business. So I had always loved aviation, Rick, and I certainly loved the idea of having a time machine, and I really loved the idea of having an ATM, and it was enough for me. So I literally, the next week, I go to the airport, I do a discovery flight. I was hooked. And, a year later, because there's a lot of time and energy and education that has to go into it, I got my private pilot's license. Today, I have my instrument rating. I'm a commercial pilot, and I fly about 150 hours a year to see customers, to see prospects, to go speak at conferences and industry events. Every now and then, I'll go to Clemson for a football game. But it's a great liberator, and it's also a hobby. I don't have many hobbies, and so this is an incredible one to have.
My wife's uncle, who died a couple of years ago in his 80s, he flew his own plane until he was 82. He was he was a designer. Georgia Tech graduate. He designed some of the biggest bridges in the world. And he just said, I can get to people in a hurry. I mean, and I can get to people that I can get home in a hurry. And he liked both of those aspects of his life. He liked sleeping in his own bed.
Yeah.
And you got small boys now. You got, and the fact that you can go and get back
That's
and
right.
not be gone so much. My generation, boy, I was gone a lot of nights in hotel rooms, missed out on a lot, trying to make sure I don't miss out on the grandchildren the way I missed out on the kids. But from that standpoint, I want to close with, what's on your bucket list? What else do you're still a young entrepreneur. What else do you want to do? What's on your list besides owning an NBA team?
Well, I believe bucket lists are important. I believe you always need to have goals, no matter what your age is. And so long as you still have goals, you've got something to continue to work for. And I actually believe as you age, it's even more important to have goals and ambitions and things that you really want to do. Man, what's on my list? I got a lot of things. So I've not been to the Summer Olympics or the Winter Olympics. Both of those are on my list. I would like to hike Kilimanjaro. That is on my list. I want to coach my children's basketball team, both boys. I want to travel extensively. There is not a country in the world that at some point I don't want to visit. It's all about timing. There's some places in the world right now I probably should not go, but I want to see it all. So travel's a big part of it. You'll like this one in particular, Rick. I want to visit every Power Four conference school and go to a home football game. That I'm going to say is probably close to 75 teams between the Power Four. I've probably been to 30 of them. So I still got a ways to go, but that's an ambition and a bucket list that will take me another 20 years, if not more, and I can
Yeah.
now start doing it with my kids.
Yeah, I'm 72 now. I've been to 79 different college stadiums. Not all college stadiums, because some of them are bowl game stadiums, but 79 different venues to see college football, which has been pretty cool. And I want to say maybe 35 college basketball arenas. And I've been to now 41 countries in all 50 states. So those are fun to have from that standpoint. But I also think there's, what I love about you is business is a means to other things, to a life. And,
Yeah.
and a lot of times entrepreneurs can get so caught up in their business, they miss out on life, and one day they wake up and go, wow, is that all there is?
Mm-hmm.
And so you've done a really good job, in my opinion, of balancing that. I also think, you like people. You enjoy getting to know people of all ages, different backgrounds and all that kind of stuff. You're curious. I mean, and being curious, I think, is a great trait for an entrepreneur, because you're never through. I'll tell you this. I have a good friend named Tom Pierce, and I was lamenting to Tom one day. I said, Tom, I have too many ideas. And he said, Rick, all those ideas are the babies God has given you. Do you want somebody else raising your babies? I went, no, damn it. You're supposed to tell me to focus on. He's like, no, these are all your ideas. You need to get to all of them. They're gifts from God to you. And I laughed and said, well, I never thought about it that way. And you think about the ideas that you have, you want to make sure that you birth those ideas and that you take those ideas places.
Well, the other thing I'll add to that, Rick, is very early in my career, it was Mark Twain, I believe, who said the object of life is to make your vocation your vacation. And, it's pithy, and some people may say, oh, it's a bit trite. But I actually think there's real truth in that statement, that if you love what you do, it's not work. And for me, what I love is the ability to work with people like you, not once, but now twice. Your next book, The Business Tithe, comes out at the end of the month. And our mission is growing entrepreneurs and businesses to benefit mankind. And the more authority someone has, the more of an impact they can make. And so the reason we do what we do is to help people like you take your idea, amplify your message to the world to ultimately make a positive impact.
And
when
Adam,
you
y'all really do that. If there's a consistent thread in the quilt of Advantage Media, it is that almost 100% of your authors are really wanting to give back. They are really wanting. I mean, a dentist is trying to do things to make people's life better. Everything is about improving society. It is about accountability and responsibility and stewardship. And that's what a foundational attribute for a business, to know that all of these entrepreneurs, all these authority figures really, truly want to make the world better.
and they all have a gift, and their gift is the knowledge, the stories, the passion, the experience, and to share that with others, to share that perhaps with the next generation. That's how they can make a difference. That's how they can have an impact. And man, what a treat it is for us to be in the business of helping people like you have impact. Right now, you do You do the heavy lifting in creating the book. We do the smaller part in making it a reality and then deploying it into the world, but it's so much fun.
Well, for all my listeners out there, and we have a lot of baby boomers that now finally have the time to write that book they've always wanted to write. I want y'all to know I know a guy. Oh, I know a guy, okay? This guy can help you. He can make it easy. You can leave a legacy. You can leave the thoughts that you want. It's not too late to showcase your authority because you're still breathing. And as long as you're still breathing, you still have a pulse. You still have a way to give back.
Yeah, I'll say two last things, Rick. One of our board members, Vern Harnish, he says all the time, he says, Adam, you've got to remember, true wealth is passing your wisdom on to the next generation. He's like, that's why what you do is so important. The second thought I'll share with all your listeners, one of our authors, I was doing a podcast with, actually. This was probably a year ago. Very wealthy, very successful entrepreneur, had more money than he would ever need for the rest of his life. And he had written a book. And the book was taking some of the key lessons that he had learned throughout his career, sharing it with others. And I said to him, I said, I've got to ask the question, you don't need to do this. You're beyond wealthy. Why did you invest the time and energy to create this book and now relentlessly trying to share this message with others? And he said, Adam, I want to die empty. Because if it's still in me and I take it with me to the grave, then I've not lived to the calling and the potential that I've been given.
It's
And I thought
interesting.
that was
I love
powerful.
that. One of my mentors is a guy named John Maxwell, and Maxwell says this. He says, you have a choice in life. You can be a reservoir and hold it, or you can be a river and give it away.
That's right.
And that's what people are doing. Listen, I can't thank you enough. You've been a friend for a long time. I've loved working with you and your people, and I appreciate you being a guest today on Shaboom.
Rick, my pleasure. And make sure everybody reads The Business Tithe. Available in your bookstores or on Amazon May 28th.
Yeah. Thanks, pal. Appreciate you. See you. Wow, it's time to take a trip down memory lane. Speaking of my new book, this is a more recent trip. This was in 2015. I actually wrote my first book in 2015. It's called Analog Advice in a Digital World, a Baby Boomer's Words of Wisdom for the Millennial Generation. Let me tell you the story of Analog Man. I'm on a plane. I'm flying from Los Angeles to Atlanta. I'm fortunate to have been upgraded to first class. I'm sitting next to my wife, who's watching either a movie or reading a book or taking a nap. And I have 26 yellow pads with me. 26 yellow pads, because I'm a yellow pad guy. In fact, if you look at the book cover, you'll see it's a yellow pad. That's me. I'm making notes all the time. And I got 26 of them. And I'm going to consolidate them down to my to-do list or important things from 27 notebooks. And so I'm writing on a blank one, and I'm tearing off pages. And as the flight attendant walks by, I just keep handing her pages to throw away. Well, there's a guy sitting across from me, across the aisle in first class, and he never says a word to me. The whole flight, he doesn't say a word. He's working. He's doing whatever he does. So I go through 26 full yellow pads to consolidate them back to one of the things that I need to do or things that I think are important, things I need to remember. So we land in Atlanta, and I'm changing planes to come home to Charleston. And you know what you do when you first thing you get off a flight from Los Angeles, you go to the bathroom, you do a few things. Well, I get on the escalator. If you've been to Atlanta Airport, between the concourses are escalators that you have to get on a train. Now, I've probably been 15 minutes since I got off the plane. I'm going down the escalator, and guess what? The guy that I sat next to is literally next to me on the escalator going down. And he turns to me and he goes, dude, I have called everybody I know and said I have met Analog Man. He had watched what I had done on the plane and was, I think, either touched or concerned about it. And he gave me the name of Analog Man. And my kids said for years had said, Dad, you ought to write a book about all your sayings, your coachisms. And so I wrote the book. It's really, you know, a fun book. It's either one plane trip for you or 52 trips to the bathroom. Either way, it works. You know, writing a book is hard work, but it's really fulfilling and it's meaningful. I want to read you just one quick chapter in the book, the very first chapter, because I think it kind of sums up the whole book and my philosophy of life and business. Chapter 1, the title is Mediocrity is Excellence to the Mediocre. We live in a world full of people who think that good enough is good enough. Good enough is simply not good enough. Though if you want our society to grow or prosper or to advance beyond its current state, I used to wonder how people could be blind to this fact. It finally dawned on me. They can't see it because they're not high achievers. High achievers view the world totally different from middle and low achievers and non-achievers. High achievers always want to improve, always want to be better than they were before, and might even hope to be the very best in their fields. If you spot mediocrity, run like hell. People content with mediocrity think that what they're doing is excellence and would not recognize true achievement if it bit them in the ass. Please, please, never be mediocre. There are too many others living in the middle for you to ever stand out among them. And that's my trip down memory lane. It's now time for the boom. The great theologian and writer Norman Vincent Peale, who wrote a great book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, tells a great story. It seems like there was a little boy on the beach one day, and as he's walking on the beach, he's noticing that there are thousands of starfish that have washed up on the beach, and they're going to die if they don't get back in the water. Thousands. And he's picking them up one at a time and throwing them back in the water. And a man comes down from the other direction and sees what the little boy's doing and sees the thousands of starfish and says to the boy, son, you can't be making a difference. And the little boy picks up one, throws it in the water and says, well, I made a difference to that one. Can you make a difference to someone today? I have a brand new website for you to check out. You can find it at www.rickkjones.com. There's a lot of great content there, and you can get a free chapter from each of my 2 books by just signing up. Take a look and let me know what you think. And that's today's boom. It's time to get back on the road with Rick. I have a dear friend, Tom Pierce. We first met when I did a little project for Tom down at the University of Louisiana Lafayette. Tom now lives in Fayetteville, Arkansas. But once when I was down in Lafayette with Tom, he took me to a wonderful restaurant called Charlie G's. And what did we get? Well, Tom's the kind of guy that when you go eat with Tom, you let him order because he knows what's good. What did we get? We got a big bowl of duck and andouille gumbo. But what did they do? In the gumbo, they put an entire crab cake on top. So now you slice that crab cake, you dip it down in that gumbo, get a little okra, get a little duck, get a little andouille sausage. Unbelievable. It's an amazing dish. Charlie G's, Lafayette, Louisiana, on the road with Rick. Our musical playlist today is all about those who have authority. Our song of the week is a great song by The Who. It's called We Won't Get Fooled Again. It's a great song about I'm in charge here. I'm not going to be fooled again. Some other songs on the playlist are really fun today. We have a song called Take This Job and Shove It by Charlie Paycheck. We've got Alice Cooper's classic Schools out for summer, meaning I don't have to listen to anybody in authority. I can do what I want. Tina Turner's classic Simply the Best. And we close the playlist with the Paul Anka tune that he wrote specifically for the great Frank Sinatra. It's called My Way. Great musical playlist today on Shaboom. It's time for the last word. I've got a little sign in my office that my mother had needle pointed for me years ago. And that sign says, I believe in me. After that, there's room for doubt. Well, amen to that one. There's no doubt we'll be back here next week with another edition of Shaboom. We'll see you then.